Get out of that seat. You're stinking up my cockpit. Dirty hands all over the controls. 20 years I've done this job. Never once has a black person sat in that chair. The captain! You think I believe you're the captain?
She looked at him calmly.
Are you done?
Are you done? Swanson's jaw clenched, his neck flushed red. Back to him. He snatched his radio.
Gate
B12, full team, now! 2 officers rushed in. Swanson grabbed her arm and ripped her from the seat. Her captain's hat hit the floor. They dragged her through the cockpit door. Her knees scraped the jet bridge. Stay with me, because what she did next brought an entire airline to its knees. But let's rewind. 6 hours before that cockpit door swung open, 4:15 in the morning, a quiet suburb outside Atlanta. The sky was still pitch black, not a single bird yet. Patricia Williams stood in her kitchen. The coffee maker hissed and gurgled on the counter. Steam curled up from a heavy ceramic mug. The smell of dark roast filled the room. She wore a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants. Her captain's uniform hung on the bedroom door, pressed and ready. Her flight bag sat by the front entrance, packed the night before. Same spot every time. The hallway told her story without a single word. A framed photo of a younger Patricia standing next to a C-17 Globemaster in desert sand. Another one of her shaking hands with a 2-star general. Her Air Force wings mounted in a shadow box. And right beside it, her FAA Airline transport pilot certificate. She pulled up the weather app on her tablet. Clear skies. Light crosswind out of the southwest. Flight 1142, Atlanta to Dallas, departure at 7:40 a.m. A standard Tuesday. Her phone buzzed. She smiled before even looking at the screen. "Hey, baby, are you up already?" It was Kayla, her 15-year-old daughter, staying with Patricia's mother while she flew this week. "You know I am," Patricia said. "How's Grandma?" "Snoring," Patricia laughed. A warm, easy laugh, the kind that only comes from a home that feels safe. "Bring me something from Dallas?" Kayla asked. "Always do." She hung up, took one last sip of coffee, rinsed the mug, grabbed her bag and her keys. Outside, the air was cool and damp, crickets still going. Patricia tossed her flight bag into the back seat of her sedan. Nothing flashy, reliable, a car that got the job done just like her. She turned the key. Jazz filled the speakers. She hummed along as she pulled onto the empty road. 18 years at Skybridge Airlines. Over 12,000 flight hours logged. 6 years flying military cargo in the United States Air Force before that. Multiple safety commendations. Not one incident on her record. Not one. This was a woman who earned everything she had. Quietly, consistently, without asking anyone for applause. Hartsfield-Jackson was already waking up when Patricia walked through the crew entrance at 5:50 a.m. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from kiosks just rolling up their gates. Rolling luggage clicked across polished tile floors. A janitor buffed the corridor near Terminal B. Patricia badged through crew security. The TSA officer nodded. "Morning, Captain Williams." "Morning, Ray." She walked through the terminal with her flight bag over one shoulder. Other pilots passed and nodded respectfully. A flight attendant waved from across the hall. Patricia knew names. She remembered faces. That was just who she was. At Gate B12, First Officer Nathan Cole was already waiting. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching ground crews load baggage onto their aircraft. "Full house today," Nathan said. 174. "Then let's make sure they get there smooth," Patricia replied. They walked down the jet bridge together. Patricia did her standard walk-around inspection. Tires, landing gear, engine intakes. She ran her hand along the fuselage like she always did. A ritual, a quiet promise between her and the machine. Everything was in order. Just another Tuesday. Meanwhile, on the other side of the airport, a different kind of morning was underway. Derek Swanson sat behind his desk in the Security Operations Office. Paperwork was scattered everywhere. 3 empty energy drink cans lined the edge. The room smelled like stale coffee and cheap cologne. He was barking into his radio. "I don't care what he said. You tell that vendor he doesn't move past the checkpoint without a full pat-down. I don't care if he's been here 100 times." Swanson was 52 years old, head of airport security operations. He wore his badge high on his chest, polished every morning, like a sheriff in a Western movie. He had transferred to Hartsfield 8 months ago. The official reason was departmental restructuring. The real reason was an internal review at his previous airport. 3 complaints of racial profiling, all buried, all quietly settled. He hadn't changed, he'd just moved. His deputy, Craig Dunham, leaned against the doorframe, 34, buzz cut, the kind of man who laughed at his boss's jokes a beat too fast. Eager, obedient. Swanson tossed down his radio. He pulled up the crew manifest for the morning departures. His finger slid down the list and stopped at Flight 1142. Captain, Patricia Williams. He stared at the name. Then he leaned back in his chair. Something shifted behind his eyes. His jaw tightened. He looked at Dunham. "Pull up the crew badge records for Flight 1142, the captain." Dunham blinked. "Any reason?" Swanson didn't answer. He just stared at the manifest. "Just do it." Patricia settled into the left seat. Her seat, the one she'd sat in thousands of times before. The cockpit smelled like recycled air and leather. Overhead switches lined the ceiling in neat rows. The instrument panel glowed soft green. Outside the windshield, ground crews moved across the tarmac in orange vests under the early morning sun. Nathan slid into the right seat beside her. He pulled out the pre-flight checklist. They'd done this together so many times it was almost muscle memory. Altimeter set? Checked. Fuel load confirmed. Confirmed. 14,000 pounds. Nav systems. Online and calibrated. Patricia's hands moved across the switches with the ease of someone who could do this blindfolded. She checked the hydraulics. She tested the rudder pedals. She reviewed the passenger count on her tablet. 174 souls. Her responsibility. Everything was clean. Everything was normal. Then a knock came at the cockpit door. Denise Holloway stood in the doorway. She was 29, the gate agent assigned to B-12 that morning. Her Skybridge lanyard hung crooked around her neck. Her hands were fidgeting. "Captain Williams, I'm sorry to bother you." Patricia turned. "What's up, Denise?" Denise swallowed hard. She wouldn't look Patricia in the eye. "Security flagged your crew badge. They're saying there's some kind of ID verification discrepancy. They want you to step out." Patricia blinked. "A discrepancy? I've had this badge for years. It cleared me through KCM 30 minutes ago." Denise nodded quickly. "I know, I told them that, but they're insisting." Patricia looked at Nathan. He frowned. She looked back at Denise. "All right, Nathan, keep running the checklist. I'll sort this out." She unclipped her seatbelt, placed her headset on the center console, straightened her uniform jacket. Then she walked out of the cockpit, down the narrow aisle, and onto the jet bridge. The air hit different out here, cooler. The faint smell of jet fuel drifted up from the tarmac below. The fluorescent tube above flickered once. 2 men stood at the far end of the jet bridge, waiting for her. Derek Swanson, arms crossed, feet planted wide, his security badge gleaming under the light. Behind him, Craig Dunham, clipboard in hand, trying to look official. Swanson didn't introduce himself, didn't say good morning, didn't extend a hand. He looked Patricia up and down, slowly, from her shoes to her captain's hat, the way someone inspects something they've already decided is counterfeit. "ID," he said. One word, flat. Patricia unclipped her Skybridge crew badge from her jacket. She held it out along with her FAA Airline transport pilot certificate. 2 documents, 18 years and 12,000 hours summarized on laminated cards. Swanson took them between 2 fingers, like he didn't want to touch them too long. He glanced at the crew badge for maybe 2 seconds. He didn't even open the ATP certificate. He handed them back. "These don't match our records." Patricia's brow tightened. "What records? What doesn't match?" "That's not your concern. I need you to step away from the aircraft, now." We're conducting further verification. Patricia held her ground. Her voice stayed level. Sir, I'm the captain of this flight. I cleared the TSA known crew member this morning. I've been with Skybridge for 18 years. My credentials are valid. If there's a specific discrepancy, tell me what it is so I can resolve it. Swanson's eyes narrowed, his chin lifted. I don't need to explain my process to you. I'm telling you, step away from the aircraft. Behind them, passengers in the boarding area began to notice. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the line. A woman near the front pulled her child closer. Patricia didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Swanson tilted his head. A thin smile crossed his lips, the kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. I am the supervisor. He let that hang in the air. Then he unclipped his radio from his belt. This is Swanson. I need additional units at gate B12 Jet Bridge, immediately. Patricia watched him. Her pulse ticked up, but her face showed nothing. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. Then I'm calling Skybridge operations to sort this out. Swanson's hand shot out. Put the phone away. Excuse me? You are in the middle of a security review. You do not make calls. You do not contact anyone. You stand here and you cooperate, or this gets a lot worse for you. Patricia held the phone at her side. Her jaw tightened, but she did not put it away. I have every right to contact my airline. You have the right to do what I tell you. Footsteps echoed behind Swanson. 2 more security officers came jogging up the jet bridge. Young, tense, hands hovering near their belts. Swanson pointed at Patricia. Remove her from the aircraft. Patricia stepped back. Don't touch me. I am the captain of this. Craig Dunham grabbed her left arm. One of the officers seized her right. Her phone clattered to the jet bridge floor. Her flight bag tipped off her shoulder and hit the ground with a heavy thud. She twisted, not to fight, but to stay upright. It didn't matter. They pulled her forward. Her captain's hat tumbled off her head and rolled across the metal floor. The gold wings on her chest caught the fluorescent light as her uniform crumpled under their grip. Get your hands off me! Her voice was firm. Not screaming, not begging. Firm. They didn't listen. Nathan Cole burst out of the cockpit. His face was white. What the hell are you doing? That is my captain! Swanson stepped in front of him, chest out, one hand raised. Sir, step back, or you will be removed next. Nathan looked past Swanson at Patricia being dragged down the jet bridge. Her knees scraped the ridged metal floor. Her sleeve tore at the shoulder seam. This is wrong, Nathan said. His voice shook. This is absolutely wrong. Swanson didn't blink. Step back. At the end of the jet bridge, where it connected to the terminal, the boarding area had gone completely silent. 174 passengers stood frozen, some with boarding passes in hand, some mid-sentence, all staring. Then the phones came up. 1, 5, 20, screens glowing, recording. Patricia was walked through the gate area in full captain's uniform, arms held by 2 men, her hat gone, her bag gone, her sleeve torn, her face composed, unbroken, but her eyes burned. An older woman covered her mouth with her hand. A businessman in a gray suit shook his head slowly. A teenage boy held his phone with both hands, recording everything. And from somewhere near the window, a little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, why are they hurting the pilot? The mother pulled her daughter close. She had no answer. Patricia was escorted through the terminal corridor, past the coffee kiosks, past the newsstands, past every set of eyes that watched and said nothing. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her like witnesses too afraid to speak. They took her to a windowless room near the security office. The door closed behind her with a heavy click. And just like that, Captain Patricia Williams, 18 years, 12,000 hours, decorated military veteran, was sitting in a holding room. Like a criminal. The holding room was barely 10 feet wide, concrete walls painted gray, no window, one fluorescent tube on the ceiling, buzzing like a trapped insect. The light flickered every few seconds, casting a pale, sickly glow across everything. A metal table sat in the center. one plastic chair on each side. The air smelled like cleaning chemicals and old sweat. In the upper corner of the room, a small security camera sat behind a dark plastic dome. Its red light blinked once, twice, steady. Patricia sat in the chair closest to the wall. Her torn sleeve hung loose at the shoulder. Her hair, once neatly pinned under her captain's hat, had come undone on one side. A scrape on her knee throbbed under her uniform pants from where it hit the jet bridge floor. She folded her hands on the table. She did not cry. She did not shake. She breathed. The door swung open. Derek Swanson walked in like he owned the room. He didn't sit. He stood on the opposite side of the table looking down at her, hands on his hips, badge catching the fluorescent light. He let the silence stretch. 5 seconds. 10. A power move, the kind of silence designed to make someone feel small. Then he spoke. "So, you want to explain to me how you got those credentials?" Patricia looked up at him. "Excuse me?" "The badge, the uniform, the whole setup." He waved his hand at her like she was a display in a store window. "Walk me through it, because from where I'm standing, none of this adds up." Patricia's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed controlled. "I earned my airline transport pilot certificate in 2008. Before that, I spent 6 years in the United States Air Force flying C-17 Globemasters. I've been a captain at Skybridge Airlines for 11 years. My employee number is 44-2916. My chief pilot is Captain Harold Benson. You can verify all of this with one phone call." Swanson didn't move, didn't pick up his radio, didn't reach for a phone. He just smirked. "Yeah, I'm gonna need more than that. I'm running a full background check, so until that comes back clean, if it comes back clean, you're not going anywhere." "A background check," Patricia repeated. "For what? On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I said so." He turned his back to her and knocked on the door twice. It opened. Craig Dunham stepped in, carrying Patricia's flight bag. He dropped it on the table with a thud. Patricia's eyes went to the bag, then back to Swanson. "What are you doing?" Swanson unzipped the bag without looking at her. He reached inside and began pulling things out, one by one, dropping them on the metal table like evidence at a crime scene. Her logbook, thousands of hours recorded in neat handwriting across dozens of pages. Her personal tablet, flight plans, weather briefings, route maps. Her headset, custom-fitted, worn smooth from years of use. Patricia stood up from her chair. "You do not have my consent to search my property." Swanson didn't even glance up. He flipped open the logbook and thumbed through the pages. His expression was bored, dismissive, like he was flipping through a magazine in a waiting room. "Sit down," he said. "I said, you do not have my consent." "And I said sit down." He kept going. He found a folded letter tucked inside the back cover of the logbook. He pulled it out, opened it. It was a personal commendation letter from Skybridge's CEO. 15 years of exemplary service, outstanding safety record, a role model for the airline. Swanson read maybe 3 lines. Then he tossed it onto the table like a used napkin. "Doesn't prove anything." Patricia stared at the letter lying crumpled on the cold metal surface. 15 years of her life, summarized on one page, tossed aside in 2 seconds by a man who hadn't earned the right to touch it. She sat back down, slowly. Not because he told her to, because she chose to. "Are you finished?" she asked. Swanson zipped the bag shut. He leaned forward, both palms flat on the table, and brought his face close to hers. "I'll decide when we're finished." The fluorescent light buzzed louder, or maybe it just felt that way. Swanson straightened up. He crossed his arms. He looked at Patricia the way someone looks at a stain on their shirt. "You know what the problem is? People like you think you can just put on a uniform and that makes you legit." Patricia's eyes locked onto his. "People like me?" "Yeah, people like you. Walking around with badges that don't check out, credentials that don't add up. I've seen it before. Fake IDs, stolen uniforms. And I'm not about to let another one slip through on my watch." Patricia's voice dropped low. "What exactly do you mean by people like me? Say it clearly." Swanson paused, just for a beat, a flicker behind his eyes. Then he straightened his shoulders. I mean people with flagged identification. My identification was not flagged. According to you. According to the TSA system that cleared me this morning. According to every database your office has access to. According to 18 years of clean records. You know that. You've known it since before you walked onto that jet bridge. Swanson's neck flushed red. He didn't like being cornered. He didn't like her tone. He didn't like that she was still sitting there, still looking him in the eye, still refusing to break. He leaned in one more time, close enough that she could smell the energy drink on his breath. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit in this room. You're going to cooperate quietly. And if you don't, I pick up that phone, I call Atlanta PD, and you don't walk out of here with a security review. You walk out in handcuffs. Your choice. Patricia said nothing. She unfolded her hands. She placed them flat on the table. She turned her head, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly into the security camera in the corner of the room. She held that gaze for 3 full seconds. She knew it was recording. Every word, every threat, every fingerprint he left on her belongings. She looked back at Swanson. Then make your call. Swanson blinked. He wasn't expecting that. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he turned and walked out of the room. The door slammed shut behind him. The fluorescent light kept buzzing. The camera kept blinking. Patricia sat alone in that gray room, hands flat, back straight, eyes dry. She waited. Back at gate B12, Nathan Cole was not sitting still. The moment they dragged Patricia off the jet bridge, he pulled out his phone. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steel. Skybridge Operations, this is First Officer Nathan Cole, assigned to Flight 1142. My captain, Captain Patricia Williams, has been physically removed from the aircraft by airport security. No valid reason was given. No documentation was presented. Her credentials are clean. I need someone from corporate here, now. The line went quiet for 3 seconds. Then chaos. Operations pulled Patricia's file immediately. Employment history, spotless. Security clearance, active. TSA known crew member status, verified that morning at 5:48 a.m. FAY, a medical, current. Background check. Renewed and clear 6 months ago. There was no flag. There was no discrepancy. There was nothing. The operations manager picked up a second line and dialed directly. Janet Aldridge answered on the second ring. Vice President of Flight Operations. 56 years old, silver hair, sharp eyes. The kind of woman who built her career brick by brick and did not tolerate fools. She also happened to be the person who mentored Patricia Williams from her very first day at Skybridge. Janet, we have a situation at Hartsfield. Captain Williams has been forcibly removed from her aircraft by airport security. No cause, no documentation, no grounds. Janet's voice went cold. Say that again. He said it again. 3 seconds of silence. Then quiet and razor sharp. Do not let that plane leave the gate. Do not let anyone near that cockpit. I am on my way. She hung up. She was already reaching for her car keys. Meanwhile, the internet was doing what the internet does. The first video hit social media at 6:58 a.m. 12 seconds of shaky footage. A black woman in a full captain's uniform being walked through a terminal by 2 security officers. Her sleeve was torn. Her hat is missing. Her face is still carved in stone. The caption read, "They just dragged a pilot off her own plane at Hartsfield right now." Within 15 minutes, it had 40,000 views. Within 30 minutes, 200,000. Comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read them. The hashtags started forming on their own. Hashtag, let her fly. Hashtag, Captain Williams. Hashtag, Skybridge Explain. And inside that windowless room, Patricia Williams still sat alone. She didn't know about the videos. She didn't know about Nathan's phone call. She didn't know that Janet Aldridge was already in her car, speeding toward the airport with the fury of a woman who had seen enough. All she knew was the buzz of the fluorescent light, the blink of the red camera light, and the scrape on her knee that still hadn't stopped stinging. She waited. 43 minutes had passed since they dragged her out of the cockpit. Patricia sat in the same chair, same position, hands flat on the table. The fluorescent light is still buzzing above her. The camera is still blinking in the corner. Then she heard footsteps. Not one set, several, moving fast, moving with purpose. The door didn't just open, it swung wide. The first person through was a woman, silver hair cut sharp at the jaw, a navy blazer over a white blouse, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She carried a leather folder in one hand and something far more dangerous in the other, certainty. Behind her stood two men in dark suits, Skybridge corporate attorneys. Their faces looked like they'd been carved from the same piece of stone. And behind them, a third man, gray sport coat, fall lanyard around his neck. A regional compliance officer who had been at Hartsfield that morning for a routine audit. He wasn't here for a routine audit anymore. Derek Swanson was standing by the far wall. He straightened up when the door opened. His chest puffed out on instinct. His hand moved toward his badge. "Ma'am, this is a restricted—" The woman cut him off like a blade through paper. "My name is Janet Aldridge. I am the Vice President of Flight Operations for Skybridge Airlines." She didn't blink. She didn't pause. She took one step closer to Swanson and pointed at Patricia. "That woman you are holding in this room is Captain Patricia Williams. She is one of the most decorated pilots in this airline's 40-year history. She is a United States Air Force veteran who flew C-17 military transports. She has 18 years of service, over 12,000 flight hours, and a safety record that is flawless." Janet let each word land like a hammer on glass. "She is also the person who was supposed to be safely flying 174 passengers to Dallas 43 minutes ago." Swanson's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Janet turned to Patricia. Her voice shifted, softer now, but only for her. "Are you all right?" Patricia looked at her mentor, the woman who had handed her first Skybridge uniform to her 11 years ago. The woman who had told her on day one, "You earned this seat. Don't ever let anyone tell you differently." Patricia nodded. "I'm all right." Janet nodded back. Then she turned to Swanson, and the softness vanished. "Let me tell you what we've confirmed in the last 30 minutes. Captain Williams' credentials are pristine. Her crew badge is valid. Her TSA known crew member clearance was verified at 5:48 this morning. Her FAA medical is current. Her background check was renewed and cleared 6 months ago." She opened her leather folder, pulled out a single printed sheet. "There is no flag on her identification. There is no discrepancy in any system. Not TSA, not FAA, not Skybridge internal records. None. Zero. It does not exist." She set the paper on the table, right next to the crumpled commendation letter Swanson had tossed aside. "Which means you fabricated a security alert to remove a credentialed airline captain from her own aircraft. You conducted an unauthorized search of her personal belongings without consent or legal cause. And you used physical force on a flight crew member in front of 174 passengers." The FAA compliance officer stepped forward. He spoke in a flat, measured tone. "Mr. Swanson, what has been described here may constitute a federal violation. Interference with a flight crew member falls under 14 CFR, Part 121. Physical removal of a credentialed captain without documented cause may also fall under 49 U.S.C. Section 46,504. I will be filing a report with the regional office today." Swanson's face was drained of color. The flush in his neck disappeared. His hands dropped to his sides. I was following protocol. There was a flag in the system. I saw it." Janet didn't let him finish. "There was no flag. We checked every system you have access to, every log, every record. There is nothing. You made a decision today based on something else entirely. And because of that decision, 174 passengers are stranded at a gate, a flight crew has been disrupted, and a decorated captain was dragged through this airport like a criminal." She closed her folder. "I hope it was worth it." Swanson opened his mouth again, closed it. His eyes darted to Craig Dunham, who was standing near the door. Dunham looked at the floor. No one was coming to help him. Patricia stood up, slowly. She straightened her uniform jacket. She smoothed the torn sleeve as best she could. She reached across the table and picked up her captain's hat, the one that had been collected from the jet bridge floor and tossed onto the table like lost property. She placed it on her head. She looked at Derek Swanson, not with anger, not with triumph, with something quieter, something heavier. I have spent my entire career proving I belong in that cockpit. I flew military transports in combat zones. I have landed aircraft in conditions you cannot imagine. And today, without evidence, without cause, without a single legitimate reason, you decided I was a threat. Her voice did not waver. Not because of anything I did, because of how I look. She picked up her commendation letter from the table, folded it carefully, placed it back inside her logbook. I want every second of this on the record, every word spoken in this room, every piece of footage from that camera. She looked at the camera one final time. Then she turned and walked out of the room, shoulders back, head high, gold wings catching the light. She did not look back. The moment Patricia walked out of that room, Swanson grabbed Craig Dunham by the arm and pulled him into the corner of the hallway. His voice was a hiss. Listen to me. We say the system flagged her, a glitch, an automatic alert that turned out to be a false positive. That's the story. You understand? Dunham's face was white. Sweat beaded along his hairline. His eyes kept darting toward the hallway where the FAA officer had disappeared. Derek, they're pulling the camera footage. They're pulling everything. I don't care. You stick to the story. System glitch. That's all it was. Dunham swallowed hard. He took one step back. I'm not taking the fall for this. Before Swanson could respond, 2 airport police officers appeared at the end of the corridor. Their radios crackled. Their faces showed nothing. Mr. Swanson, you are being placed on immediate administrative suspension pending a full investigation into this morning's incident. We need you to surrender your badge and your radio. Swanson stared at them. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Now, sir! His fingers fumbled at his chest. He unclipped the badge he polished every morning, the one he wore like a crown. He handed it over, then the radio. His hands were shaking. The officers walked him out of the security wing, down the corridor, through the same terminal where, less than an hour ago, Patricia Williams had been paraded in front of hundreds of people with her sleeve torn and her hat on the floor. Now it was Swanson's turn. Airline employees stood along the corridor, gate agents, baggage handlers, flight attendants. They watched him pass. No one said a word. No one waved. No one offered a look of sympathy. Just silence. The kind of silence that says everything. His shoes squeaked against the polished floor. The fluorescent lights hummed above him. He kept his eyes forward, but his shoulders had caved in. The man who had stood over Patricia with his hands on his hips now walked with his arms hanging limp at his sides. He was nobody now, and everybody knew it. At the same time, Patricia Williams walked back through Terminal B toward Gate B12. Her uniform was still wrinkled. Her sleeve was still torn at the shoulder. Her knee still ached. But her back was straight. Her hat was on her head. Her flight bag hung from her shoulder. She turned the corner and saw the gate. 174 passengers were still there. The flight had been held. They had been waiting. Some were standing. Some were sitting on the floor near the windows. Some had their phones out. All of them turned when she appeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the hum of the terminal, the distant sound of a gate announcement 2 concourses away. Then a man near the front of the boarding line started clapping. Slow at first, steady. A woman beside him joined. Then a teenager with a backpack. Then an older couple near the window. Then a flight attendant standing at the gate desk. It spread through the crowd like a wave. Within seconds, the entire gate area was on its feet, clapping. Some people were cheering. A woman wiped her eyes. A man held his phone up and nodded. And from the row of seats near the window, a small voice cut through everything. "Mommy, look! She's back!" It was the same little girl, the one who had asked why they were hurting the pilot. She was standing on her seat, pointing at Patricia with both hands, bouncing on her toes. Patricia looked at her, and for the first time that morning, she smiled. She walked down the jet bridge, stepped into the aircraft, moved through the cabin. Passengers in their seats watched her pass. Some nodded. Some whispered, "Thank you." One man reached out and gently touched her arm as she passed his row. She opened the cockpit door. Nathan Cole was standing. He had not left that seat the entire time. "Welcome back, Captain." Patricia nodded. She set her bag down. She sat in the left seat, her seat. She put on her headset. She placed her hands on the yoke. "Let's get these people to Dallas." Flight 1142 pushed back from Gate B12 at 8:23 a.m. It landed in Dallas at 10:41 a.m. Central Time. Smooth flight. Clear skies. Not a single incident. 2 hours later, back at Hartsfield, Craig Dunham sat in an interview room across from 2 FAA investigators. He lasted 11 minutes before he broke. "He told me to find a reason. Before he even saw her, he looked at the crew manifest, saw the captain's name, and said, 'No way that ID is real. Go handle it.'" He rubbed his face with both hands. "I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway." Dunham was suspended effective immediately, but his statement became the single most important piece of evidence in the entire case, because it proved one thing beyond any doubt. This was never a mistake. It was never a glitch. It was never a misunderstanding. It was a decision, made before Patricia Williams ever set foot on that jet bridge. Made the moment Derek Swanson saw a black woman's name next to the word captain. Within 48 hours, the incident at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was no longer just a viral video. It was a federal investigation. The FAA opened a formal inquiry the same afternoon Patricia landed in Dallas. By the next morning, Skybridge Airlines launched its own internal review. A team of corporate investigators flew into Atlanta with one instruction from the CEO himself: leave nothing unturned. They started with Derek Swanson's personnel file, and what they found inside was worse than anyone expected. 3 prior complaints of racial profiling at his previous airport posting in Charlotte. 3 separate incidents, 3 different crew members, all people of color. Every single complaint had been marked resolved internally. No disciplinary action, no formal record. Just quiet meetings behind closed doors and paperwork that disappeared into filing cabinets. But it didn't stop there. Investigators pulled Swanson's security logs from his 8 months at Hartsfield. They found a pattern so clear it could have been drawn with a ruler. Of the 41 random crew ID checks Swanson had personally initiated, 34 were conducted on crew members of color. 34 out of 41. That's not random. That's a target list. Then came the emails. Internal messages between Swanson and colleagues at his previous posting. In one, sent 14 months earlier, he wrote about the airline industry's diversity hiring programs. His exact words: "They keep lowering the bar and wondering why the planes don't fly straight." In another, responding to a new policy requiring bias awareness training, he wrote, "What's next? Letting them run the tower?" Every message was time-stamped. Every message was saved on the company server. Every message was now in the hands of federal investigators. The story went national on day 2. Every major network ran the footage. The same 12-second clip that had already been viewed millions of times online. Patricia Williams in her captain's uniform, arms held by security officers, sleeve torn, hat gone, face like stone, was now playing on television screens in airports, living rooms, and offices across the country. News anchors called it one of the most disturbing incidents of racial profiling in the aviation industry in recent memory. Aviation safety experts went further. They explained that pulling a qualified captain off a flight without cause wasn't just discriminatory, it was a federal safety violation. Removing the person responsible for 174 lives based on a fabricated alert put every single passenger at risk. Civil rights organizations issued formal statements. The NAACP called for a complete overhaul of airport security accountability standards. 2 members of Congress posted public letters demanding answers from the Transportation Security Administration. Skybridge Airline's stock dropped 3% in a single trading day. The airline's CEO released a public video statement. He stood behind a podium with the Skybridge logo behind him. His voice was tight. "What happened to Captain Williams is unacceptable. It is a failure of oversight, a failure of accountability, and a violation of the values this airline was built on. We are conducting a full review of our security partnership protocols, and we will hold every individual involved to account." Patricia gave one interview. Just one. She sat across from a journalist in a quiet studio. No makeup team, no publicist, just her, in a simple black blazer, speaking calmly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. She talked about the thousands of black pilots, flight attendants, and aviation professionals who go to work every day and face the same quiet suspicion she faced that morning. The glances, the double checks, the assumptions. "I had cameras," she said. "I had witnesses. I had a vice president who knew my name and drove to the airport to stand in that room with me. Most people don't have that. Most people go through what I went through and never get heard." The hashtag Captain Williams trended nationally for 3 consecutive days. 3 weeks after the incident, prominent civil rights attorney Gregory Tate took Patricia's case. He was 60 years old, sharp as a scalpel. He had spent his career fighting exactly this kind of battle. Federal charges were filed against Derek Swanson on 4 counts. Interference with a flight crew member, a federal offense under 49 U.S.C. Section 46,504. Violation of civil rights under color of authority. Filing a false security report. Unlawful search and seizure of personal property. The trial lasted 9 days. The prosecution played the full security camera footage from the holding room. Every word Swanson said was on tape. The "people like you" comment, the threat of handcuffs, the moment he tossed Patricia's commendation letter onto the table like garbage. Craig Dunham took the stand. He testified that Swanson had instructed him to find a reason before ever seeing Patricia in person. Swanson had looked at the crew manifest, seen a black woman listed as captain, and decided on the spot that her credentials had to be fake. The defense argued protocol confusion, a system error, a misunderstanding. The jury didn't buy a single word. Derek Swanson was found guilty on all 4 counts. The judge sentenced him to 36 months in federal prison. He received a lifetime ban from any airport security position in the United States. He was ordered to pay restitution to Patricia Williams. Craig Dunham received 12 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and permanent removal from security work. The gavel came down, and for the first time since that morning at Hartsfield, the scales balanced. But Patricia wasn't finished. She never wanted this to end with one man in a courtroom. Skybridge Airlines overhauled its entire security partnership protocol. Mandatory bias awareness training became required for every airport security officer who interacted with flight crews. A new crew protection hotline was established, a direct line for any crew member facing harassment or unjust treatment. An independent review board was created to investigate any crew-related security incident within 24 hours. The FAA issued a national advisory to every commercial airport in the country. The message was simple. Interfering with a credentialed flight crew member without documented cause is a federal violation. Period. Patricia was promoted to check airman, a senior captain responsible for training and evaluating other pilots. She was also invited to join Skybridge's Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. But the thing she was proudest of had nothing to do with titles. She established the Williams Aviation Scholarship Fund. The mission was simple: provide flight training scholarships for young people of color who dreamed of careers in aviation. The fund launched 6 months after the trial. At the inaugural event, Patricia stood at a podium in front of 200 guests. She wore her captain's uniform, pressed, clean, every stripe in place. She looked out at the audience. She saw young faces, hopeful faces, faces that looked like hers. "I didn't fight that day so I could get a promotion," she said. "I didn't fight so my name could trend on the internet. I fought so the next young black girl who dreams of flying doesn't have to sit in a holding room and prove she belongs in her own cockpit." The room stood. The applause lasted a full minute. So where are they now? Patricia Williams is still flying. She was promoted to check airman, a senior captain who trains and evaluates other pilots. In the 2 years since that morning at Hartsfield, she has personally trained over 40 new pilots. Some of them came to Skybridge because of her. Some of them applied the day after they saw her face on the news. Her scholarship fund, the Williams Aviation Scholarship Fund, has awarded 12 grants to young people of color pursuing careers in aviation. 12 future pilots. 12 futures changed. Every Tuesday, she still flies the Atlanta to Dallas route. Flight 1142. Same gate, same jet bridge, same left seat. When she walks through Hartsfield-Jackson, crew members wave. Gate agents call her by name. TSA officers nod. She waves back every time. She remembers every name. She never stopped being exactly who she was before that day. That's the thing about dignity. When it's real, nobody can take it from you. Not with a badge, not with a radio, not with 2 hands on your arms and a door that locks behind you. Derek Swanson is serving his sentence at a federal correctional facility in South Carolina. He filed one appeal. It was denied. The judge wrote in her ruling that the evidence of premeditated racial profiling was overwhelming and unambiguous. His name is now a case study, literally. Airport security training programs across the country use the Swanson incident as a textbook example of what happens when unchecked bias meets unchecked authority. New security officers watch the holding room footage as part of their certification. They see his face. They hear his words. They learn what not to become. Craig Dunham completed his probation. He works in warehouse logistics now. He doesn't talk about Hartsfield much, but during his court testimony, he said something that stuck with a lot of people. "I knew it was wrong. I knew it the moment he told me to pull her file. I did it anyway because I was afraid to say no to my boss. That's not an excuse. That's the problem." Nathan Cole is still flying, still in the right seat, still Patricia's first officer. He requested to stay on her crew permanently. When a journalist asked him why, he didn't hesitate. "Because she's the best captain I've ever flown with, period." This story has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of names, a lot of moments that make your chest tight. But if you strip it all down, the lesson is simpler than you think. Authority without accountability is not authority. It's abuse. The moment Derek Swanson used his badge to act on his prejudice instead of his duty, he stopped being a security officer. He became the threat. Silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality, it's permission. Nathan Cole could have stayed in that cockpit. He could have waited. He could have told himself it wasn't his problem. He didn't. He picked up the phone. And that phone call changed everything. Dignity is not something that can be stripped away by force. They tore Patricia's sleeve. They knocked her hat to the floor. They scraped her knees on a jet bridge. But they never once touched her dignity. Because dignity isn't worn on your shoulders. It lives in how you carry yourself when the world is trying to break you down. And systems don't change on their own. People change them. Patricia changed one. Not with anger, not with revenge, with 12,000 hours of proof and a refusal to accept that she didn't belong. The real power in this story was never her rank. It was never her title or her uniform or her commendation letter. It was the fact that she sat in that gray room under that buzzing light with a camera blinking in the corner, and she did not break. And it was the people around her, Nathan who made the call, Janet who walked through that door, the passengers who held up their phones and said, "The world needs to see this." They made sure the truth couldn't be buried. So here's my question for you. If you were sitting at that gate, Gate B12, Hartsfield-Jackson, a regular Tuesday morning, and you watched a decorated pilot get dragged out of her own cockpit by security, her sleeve torn, her hat on the floor, her knees scraping the jet bridge, What would you do? Would you film it? Would you stand up and say something? Would you look away and pretend it wasn't happening? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to read every single one. If this story hit you somewhere deep, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend. Post it in your story. Let it travel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come on now. You already watched this far. You know what to do. Hit that button. Turn on notifications. Because there are more stories like this one, and I'm not done telling them. Because at the end of the day, justice doesn't just happen on its own. People make it happen. Ordinary people. People who refuse to look away. Be one of those people.
Swanson got 36 months federal lifetime ban, and Patricia, she went back onto the plane, flew 174 people to Dallas, and landed smooth. Same captain, same seat, same woman. But here's what this story is really about. They tore her sleeve, knocked her hat off, scraped her knees on a jet bridge, locked her in a grey room under a buzzing light, and none of it touched who she was. Because dignity isn't your uniform, it's not your straps, it's how you carry yourself when everything is being stripped away. Patricia sat in that room, alone, no phone, no help coming, and she didn't break. She looked into the camera and said, "Make your call." That's not training, that's character, the kind you build over 12,000 hours and a lifetime of showing up when the world keeps telling you you don't belong. Most of us will never be trained from a cockpit, but we all know what it feels like to be looked at and judged before we even open our mouth. When the last time someone decided who you were before they know your name? Tell me in the comments. If this